Hey everyone, it's Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Show. And we have a first-time guest in the Massimo Show, but man, this guy I've been following for a while. He was actually in my second book, Teams Built to Dominate. And besides being an amazing, incredible broker, he has an incredible story. Please welcome Matt McGregor of Colliers, their executive VP, to the Massimo Show. Hi, this is Rod Santomassimo, and welcome to the Massimo Show. The objective of the Massimo Show is to share how you can maximize your personal, professional margin. That's right. Let's make more money in less time. Let's turn chaos into clarity, confusion into confidence, and income into real wealth. Along with sharing my insight on how I grew a multi-million-dollar professional business, we're going to bring you the expert advice from a variety of authors, consultants, and thought leaders who will provide the tools you need to maximize your own personal and professional margin. Welcome to the Massimo Show. Matt?
Thanks, Rod. Really appreciate being on. We've known each other a long time, and I'm excited to be a part of the show. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't watch the video, I'm looking at Matt. It's 10 o'clock in the morning when I'm doing this recording right now. It's 7 o'clock in Seattle where Matt is. He's been in the office for over an hour. That's his natural cadence, by the way. But what I'm looking at is behind him is all these awards everywhere. It's a reflection of his professional accomplishments, though his personal accomplishments are actually, I would say, as or much more impressive. So, Matt, I start every question the same way with all our guests, and that is, who was Matt McGregor in high school, and what was he doing?
I looked a little different than I do now, but I'm still a similar person. Gosh, I was a terrible student, Rod. I had dyslexia. I didn't ever graduate high school, actually. So I partied a lot, had a lot of friends, kind of showed up for high school for the social aspect of it, not so much of the academic aspect. I was a educated child of the 80s. They didn't know what to do with us dyslexic folks. So we fell further and further behind. But I would say I was always a salesman, always had some sort of side hustles going on. I will say, I'll back you up a little bit before high school and say I always valued work because I didn't excel in school. I remember my earliest vision was third grade of seeing people get on the bus to go to work all dressed up. And I so wanted bad out of that classroom to jump on that bus. And that was my earliest kind of memory of my desire to work and be an entrepreneur.
Well, Matt, you didn't graduate from high school. That's the rest of the thing I heard right there. I want everyone to hear that. He didn't graduate from high school, but man, so you knew you were a national salesman. What was the conversion and then the move towards sales? What was your first couple of sales opportunities?
Believe it or not, I was 10 years old and I had a job at a place called the Family Fitness Center. And I was cleaning like basketball courts and racquetball courts. It was a family health club. And so I was cleaning. And on my way every day to this job, I had to walk through this strip mall. And the strip mall had a place called Super Sound, which was a stereo shop. And I loved music. And so I went in there every single day before work at the Family Fitness Center. And I would, turn on all the radios and the car stereos and the home stereos and the CB radios and everything. And this went on for quite some time. And they were having a big blowout sale one day. And the owner was in there, Chuck. He's like, Matt, I need your help. You know where everything is. Can I pay you today to show everybody? Well, fast forward, I get this job. I end up quitting the Family Fitness Center.
How old are you?
10. And so my first sales job was selling stereo equipment at Super Sound. So when you walk in and man, they had, everybody that needed a sound system, whether it was your car or home, you went to Super Sound. Okay. And so when somebody would come in, I would kind of size them up and I had 4 or 5 cassettes. And if we were pushing Sony speakers or Pioneer or whatever we were pushing, I would take, if it was a guy, certainly I'd grab the, Rolling Stone, Start Me Up, and I'd throw that in and set the speakers that I wanted and blare it. And then the ones that I didn't want him to buy, I'd put in some crappy music, right? And so that was kind of my first introduction to sales, and I was pushing speakers and pushing different sound systems.
So Matt, at 10 years old, you recognize that certain variables get someone to buy the more high value, higher commission opportunities.
Yes. Certain soundtracks at certain volumes sound a lot better.
Okay.
That was my introduction to sales for sure.
Yeah. Now, I think working at 10 years old in a shop, unless you're a child of someone, that's illegal now in the U.S.
Probably illegal then.
It's probably illegal then.
Nobody cared.
Okay, so take us to the real estate side. How did this stereo sales king turn to real estate one day?
Okay, well, between that career and real estate, there was probably 20 careers in the in-between. When I left high school, I didn't even get close to graduating. When everybody walked, I walked out, right? Okay. And I went and did everything I worked in Alaska in the cod industry up on the Aleutian Dragon chain. That's an education in itself. I ended up getting, as you know, both a BA from the University of Washington as well as a master's degree in supply chain many, many years later, obviously night school. But I'd say my biggest education were those years, call it between 18 and 22, before I really got into sales, doing, Alaska fishing, roofing, foundations, drywall, framing, you name it. I was a private investigator for a year for L&I, undercover, just wacky stuff, right? Just trying to find my way. And fast forward, I got into food sales at 23 and was introduced. I went down, got really good sales. And I was dyslexic, as I said many times, but I learned that I was an audio learner, because I would say up to about 23, I had read, maybe 5 books in my life, right? I was just a slow reader, struggled with it. And when I got introduced to food sales, I was also introduced to a guy named Tom Hopkins. And I started listening to audiobooks, driving to and from restaurants and grocery stores and all this, places that I was selling food. And I started plowing through sales books by the week, multiple, right? Buying cassettes. And I ended up at a sales seminar down in Phoenix that I had to pay $2,500 for, which was a lot when you were making, 25 grand or something. But there was 1,000 salespeople from all industries. And it was a 3-day boot camp, and I ended up winning this competition. I got to go home to Tom Hopkins' house where Zig Ziglar was and a bunch of other speakers. I got to spend the evening with them. And that changed my world. And the fact that I learned that I was an audio learner. And so to this day, I convert everything into readers. I'm obviously much better at it, but there's technology there. So I didn't graduate high school. And this is a very long answer to get to your question, which is how I got into commercial real estate. Fast forward, I spent 10, 11 years in food sales, but at the same time, I was going to night school. I had side hustle businesses. This is before I had kids, so I had all sorts of, I was making a ton of money. And so plowed through and got my BA and on to my master's. And then at 34, I was actually as a side business. So get this, my main business was selling food, right? I was the number one salesman, in the country at what I was doing. And then on the side, I got to know the restaurant business so well, I was side hustling restaurants. So I was selling them, and I would have to read their leases, or if they were selling the building with them, I was like, okay, starting to understand how real estate played into businesses, okay? And I understood logistics because I was moving food around the world. That's why I went into industrial rather than retail, because I was obviously selling retail buildings on the side hustle. So at 34, I kind of gave all that up. I owned a restaurant. I sold that. I did all that and went into commercial, industrial, logistics, supply chain, real estate. There you go. Long answer.
It's a great answer. Okay, before we take a break, though, because I know the story, because I know your story. So if I recall, something happened in your life where you were the best of the best, and maybe in food sales, and they wanted to give you promotion, but they didn't, because share that story.
Well, it was kind of a promotion. I was 26 and hadn't gone back to school yet. I actually went back at 26, but I was the top ranked guy in the nation. I was making all kinds of money. And one of the products that I sold was corrugated packaging material to all of these restaurants and grocery store chains and all this stuff. So this company that manufactured them, they were a Fortune 100 company, came to me and said, hey, our Western region guy is retiring and you're selling more of our stuff than anybody in the country, number one by far. We'd like you to take this position. And it was about 2 times what I was making just for starters. And I'm like, absolutely. So I'm taking that position. And so I accepted. And it was a week or so later, they said, hey, we're going to have a little powwow before we do all the formalities of all the written stuff. Our national sales manager and C-class exec, whoever that was, CFO or whatever it was. And their sales team was coming out to Seattle. So wanted to have lunch with me and kind of introduce me to the team. So at lunch, I'm sitting next to the national sales manager. And throughout the process, he's like, "Oh, where'd you go to school?" And I'm like, "Shorewood High School." And he's like, no. I mean, where'd you go to college? Of course, table full of top execs. All of them were proud of their alumni. And I obviously didn't have one. So it was this like awkward, embarrassed thing when I had to say it. And it was like, could have heard a pin drop after that. And it was like awkward. And they ended up calling me and pulling the offer because they were like, "Hey, this is just a requirement." Kind of just completely looked at me different. And it was embarrassing. I was ashamed of it. And I was like, I'm never letting that happen again. And I went home and told my wife, I'm never letting that happen again. I'm going to have to get this paperwork. I know I can do the job clearly, but I'm going to have to get some paperwork behind me. And so I went through year-round, including summers, 4 straight years of night school, and got my business degree from the University of Washington, then moved on to SPU for MBA coursework. And then years later, I went back and to the #1 program in the country for supply chain, because obviously I was in supply chain real estate. And so I wanted some additional education in that exact spectrum. And so I went back and got my master's of science in supply chain from Michigan State. Go Green.
Okay, hold on. There's a lot to download. What we're going to do is we're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back and talk about commercial real estate. But I'm going to tell you, Matt, and I'll tell the listeners this too. While you were talking, you made my hand go into my mouth because my 20-year-old son, who's a sophomore in college, walked in my office. He's working with me this summer. And I said, "Sit down and listen," right? I said, "Sit down and listen," because you got to hear this story, because this is not just a commercial real estate podcast that you listen to. This is a story you have to share with your kids and just listen to it again for yourself. If there's ever self-doubt or what you cannot do, what you're told you cannot do. This story is one of the more inspirational stories you'll hear on the Massimo Show. So, Matt, hold on tight. We're going to take a quick break, and folks will be right back. And then Matt's talking about commercial real estate, supply chain, logistics, affecting everyone today. And we're going to hear from the expert. So hold on. We're right back with the Massimo Show. Hey, guys, it's Rod Santomassimo, and I got great news for you. I have taken the lessons of the last 30 years, all the conferences I went to, and I packaged the best of the best aspects and even plussed it in a conference we're calling Massimo Con. It is going to share with you and give you direct access to 9, 7, and 8-figure producers, some amazing keynote speakers, and so much more. Oh, it's a live 2-day event in Dallas on November 2nd and 3rd. You've got to be there if you're dedicated to making sure you get in position to dominate CRE in 2023. Massimo Con is on, baby. You've got to get there. Check our social posts, check our website for your information. And yes, get there because there's only a limited number of seats left. Hope to see you at Massimo Con. Hey guys, we're back with Matt McGregor. Amazing story. High school dropout, now with a master's in supply chain logistics. It's incredible. Just incredible. And a salesman like no other. Now, some of you get a chance to actually meet Matt. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But Matt, let's talk about commercial real estate now. So how long have you been with Colliers?
I've been going with Colliers, I believe, about 13 years now.
13 years. And folks, so Matt, tell me about a typical year for you as far as not income, no, but what kind of clients do you work with? What kind of solutions do you solve?
It's evolving. It always has. We're always pushing the limits and trying to figure out where the business is going. But I would say we play in 3 buckets, and I'll give them in order of percentage of income. First is national and international tenant rep. So we are doing portfolio stuff. So say one of our clients has about 250 global locations, about half owned, about half leased. So we are constantly looking at their network. They're acquiring companies. So we're figuring out best ways to blend both manufacturing and distribution, doing site selection work, doing network optimization work, and everything from selling and leasing real estate to negotiating state and local incentives and doing total cost analysis on the supply chain side. So that would be the tenant rep side and our #1 bucket of revenue. The next 2 kind of go together, but they are siloed. First is capital markets. So we sell the large industrial buildings and parks. So say there would be call it a 1 million foot park, and Amazon would take 400,000 feet and like Home Depot would take a couple hundred. So these big, and it's a collection of distribution and fulfillment and manufacturing companies. So we would bring that to what you say is the capital markets, which is kind of the Wall Street funds and pension funds and life insurance companies and private equity funds that buy annuities of industrial real estate for the income and cash flow. So we sell those projects. And then finally, correlated with that is what we call landlord or agency work. So we represent large owners that want to keep those buildings full and maximize their value on them.
Incredible. So how did you tap into this amazing, most brokers don't work in your world. They don't. Let's face it. You're the top echelon of brokerage, specifically when it comes to the industrial side and working with the likes of Amazon and others. But how did you initially get there? What was the journey from when you started 13 years ago, building your business, that you met Bill and you took on the different scope of business? So what were you doing in your first few years and how did you get to where you're going now?
Great question. So I came from, as I mentioned, the food industry, moving food around the world. So I immediately started calling on some of those accounts. And one of the first accounts I got was somebody I'm still working with today that did, national and international work. So I've got exposed to national markets right away and international deals. And so on the tenant rep side, that was a natural thing. I came in and worked for a landlord team. So they saw in me a very unique salesman that didn't quite understand real estate and had a good background in logistics. So I was immediately cold calling tenants that they didn't really have the sophistication on. They were more of a landlord group. And so I added that value right away and could bring them in once I was very quick to get meetings and understood how to get around people and to book meetings. I was very good at sales. And so that's what they weren't good at, but they were absolutely, global world-class practitioners of commercial real estate. So then I would bring them to the meetings, of course, and help me close the deals. And so that was.
Let me just stop there. Yeah. So folks listening, what I heard Matt say was that he leveraged his relationships, he leveraged his experience, then he leveraged others who had more talent at the time than he did to provide solutions to that network. Think about what you're doing out there and what your network is and relationships you have and what you could bring into the table and bring others in to serve them with their needs, whatever those needs may be. So Matt, tell me the next step.
Yeah, collaboration is the key for sure. The next one, obviously, they were a landlord team. So it taught me the agency side, which is a very detailed process. I would call tenant rep is very entrepreneurial. The landlord gig is a little bit more like, a high-end job, right? Where you're reporting to funds and Wall Street funds and private equity groups where you're reporting on the market, on their specific assets, you're underwriting things. And so I learned that side of the business from that team. The capital markets was a little bit of an accident. Capital market sales. I was very good at user sales, so selling to specific companies. And I put together a very unique approach to that the market hadn't seen, and I quickly dominated it. In year 3, I sold 3 times more buildings than anybody in our entire state. And I did that because what I always heard from tenants is, gosh, we'd really like to buy a building, right? And they didn't exactly know how. So I ended up getting together with an financial analysis person, putting together a really good lease versus own spreadsheet. And then I brought in some lenders into my pitch and put together a very unique approach where I would go to these guys and show them exactly what it meant to lease or own and how to do it. And I'd bring in the SBA.
You just heard commodity authority. Matt has never been a commodity. He's always been an authority. And that play right there was a huge authority play. Matt, that's awesome. You said collaboration coming in, and you still talking about collaboration on the tail.
Still collaboration.
But
yes.
Matt, continue.
Yeah. So I always heard the dream was I want to own my own building. The reality was most of the time that didn't happen, but boy, would I give them that opportunity. Most of the time they couldn't come up with enough money for the down payment. And those first few years in the analysis would always crush you. It always made sense to own it long term, but could you manage that first couple of years of those type of expenses? 95% of the time the answer was no, but I came in trying to give them their dream with the ability to do it. Whether or not they had the ability, that was the question, but I always ended up doing the renewals.
Right. Even if they couldn't achieve that dream, they knew that you were the resource and they were still leverage your expertise
I gave them every opportunity. And you know what? I did a lot more renewals than I did building sales, but I had a ton of building sales.
Yeah.
But then 2008 happened. That was my third 3.5 years in by this point, making a ton of money, doing really well. And then, everything falls apart. And I'm like, the user market was gone. There's no financing, right? And the volumes were down. Nobody was looking to buy a building for sure. And so I happened to accidentally cold call a billionaire. Literally, I didn't know it. And
he accidentally cold called billionaire.
I cold called a billionaire about a year before the downturn and started to get to know him and understanding a little bit about what he was trying to achieve. And by that time, I was pretty sophisticated in building sales. Well, all of a sudden, the market was gone. What I always call the capital markets the herd, because they moved together, right? So the herd said, instability, I'm gone. And so they go running that way, and users went running this way, and nobody was left on the playing field except my billionaire client. And so we ran around buying investment grade. Now, instead of user grade, I started to understand how does this look versus other investments and alternative investment. So I started learning the capital markets game in that downturn with that client. And then that obviously gave me a sophistication that ballooned from there.
Okay, so when did you and Bill connect?
So Bill came on the scene about the same time I did in our industry. Bill Condon, for the listeners, who was my business partner.
Wait. He wasn't your business partner right away. No. So, but we came on the scene at the same time, about 2004. He came out of college. I came out of another industry. So he's 10 years younger than me, although I'm bald. So, with my beautiful hair, they often call him my older brother. Sorry, Bill. I didn't realize Bill was younger than you.
Yeah, 10 years. Sorry, Bill. No. But Bill so he came on the scene, and Bill is a phenomenal he's the guy that walks in the room that everybody loves. Okay, so selling Bill is really easy, right? I'll get the appointments, bring Bill in, we're closing the deal. So all eyes on Bill. He's just a wonderful person, a great personality. He's a multi-sport athlete.
Wait a minute. Wasn't Bill your direct competitor?
He was my direct competitor, and him and I rose to the ranks. Sorry, I got sidetracked. We rose to the ranks very quickly. And like every pitch after a couple of years ended up being me versus Bill after the tenant or landlord kind of weeded out the competition. I swear it was like 90% of the time it ended up being me versus Bill, right? So Bill was trying to recruit me. I was trying to recruit him. And finally, he came to me and said, hey, listen, I got this offer from this company to come over here and run it. I won't name the company, but he said, I'm not going without you. And I said, well, I'm not going, but you should take that. And he goes, well, okay. So he went, but he continued to recruit me. And I just got to a point where, believe it or not, Rod, I sent my wife to go interview him, which I do key roles on my team. So she went and interviewed him, had a cocktail with him at a bar near our house, and came back and opened the door and said, that's your partner. He's a statesman. That was her quote. And so I went the next day and said, okay, structure the offer this way, and we are good to go. And the rest has been history. Our families are extremely... sorry.
Wait a minute. Is it true, because you're an admin, your third leg in the stool is Bethany, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Now, is it true that you try to recruit Bethany away from Bill?
That would be a true statement. So Bethany was and is the best admin in the business. And we had an admin that when I was at Cushman & Wakefield, it was moving to another state. And we were like, gosh, we got to get an admin in here. Gosh, Bethany's the best in the business. And so I'm like, Bill hasn't accepted any of our offers to come over here. A huge part of Bill's success is definitely Bethany. So we took a hard run at Bethany, who was the most loyal person in the world. And she leveraged that into a nice raise from Bill.
Of course she did.
Good job, Bethany. And so I couldn't pull him over and couldn't beat him. So, the old adage, you can't beat him, join him.
Yeah, but there's so much more insight to that story. It's funny. It's remarkable how it all ended up. You three are together. You guys are dominating the supply logistics space, industrial space, certainly in not only Northwest, but nationally, internationally.
For sure.
But look, some people would say, I can't go call competitors' teammate or something. This is a free market. people decide on their own what they want to do and how they leverage it. Bethany said no, but then Bethany got a big raise from Bill because you showed her the value she had.
That's right.
Right? So the listeners, take the lessons from this. Besides the great story, take the lessons from this. Okay, so you have now created this dynamic, dominant. Now, is it just you, Bethany, and Bill, or is there more to your team now?
No, there's a lot more to our direct team. Sydney, who is Bethany's equal partner on the administration side, she's really I'd call it our technology and innovation manager. So I throw a lot at the team and ideas, the infamous entrepreneur with constant ideas. So she does a lot of our new technology, whether it's presenting or, presentations, podcast packages, supply chain analytics. So, whatever it is, she's doing a lot of the marketing for the team. She even goes on presentations with us. So she's really the team organizer when it comes to the promotion of our team, I would say. That's her, dynamic role on the team. And then Kyle back he'll definitely be our, National Rookie of the Year. He was on my podcast about a year ago in what will probably forever be our top podcast, which is First Year in Brokerage. Kyle started calling on me his freshman year in college. And I was like, I'm not hiring anybody. I'm not, he ended up doing 2 internships for me before his senior year. And then I was paying him out of his dorm. He was so good to do things for me. And so it was crazy. I was just sending him Venmoing him cash for work.
Hey, at least he wasn't 10 years old.
Yeah, that's true. But I did respect him like that. I value work, right? My dad was a union guy, 33 years at a brewery, and I started working at 10. So I value that. And you don't see that in a lot of younger people. No knock on the generations today, but you don't see it like you do. But he's a throwback. He's an old soul. And so Kyle is a phenomenal member of our team. He's already knocked down a national account in his first full year on our team, and he's going to be, I think, National Rookie of the Year for Colliers. He's doing phenomenal. And then Jack Murphy on our team, he's a phenomenal tenant rep guy. He's probably 4 or 5 years in the business now. So he does a lot of our local tenant rep calling. If we have a vacancy in one of our assets, he does, targeted calling and marketing for that. He's starting to get pretty sophisticated in building sales as well. So that's Jack Murphy. And then from there, we have a phenomenal marketing team. I won't go into all the details on that, but we have a phenomenal market team. And then down in LA, through collaboration of Colliers, we have a business development team that does a lot of the high-end, more pitches, presentations, and vets out technology for us. And then obviously through the Colliers network, I have a massive amount of resources and a research team and all sorts of things that is part of my reason for being at Colliers is those resources. And then finally, I have a supply chain and analytics team that does everything from labor analytics, site selection, and network optimization, who I work with my clients.
And that's where I want to go to next. I got 2 more questions for you. In layman's terms, I'm the best layman example there is in the world. So in layman's terms, supply chains logistics, it sounds awesome. And it's never been more on everyone's mind than ever, I don't think, than today. So what exactly is going on? Is there other solutions? Are there specific drivers and catalysts? Help the audience understand what's going on.
Yeah. Supply chain was a term that was really a military term 5 years ago for most people. Now is a household term because we can't get our goods, or those goods when we get them are very, very expensive or late, or you're getting it in 2 hours, right? And so the supply chain is now this very sophisticated network of activities that gets your raw goods to manufacturing, your manufacturing to point of origin or directly to a customer, or there's multiple steps in the process. And so with the sophistications of supply chain and the changing labor analytics globally, when brokerage at the highest level is not just the real estate component. The real estate component typically, it's everything that most brokers think about, real estate brokers. But it's really 4 to 6% typically of the bottom line of a budget for a company. And so what's the rest, right? You're making a decision on 4 or 6%? Well, no, you're making the decision on what the total cost analysis of a particular facility is. And that's, again, real estate being 4 or 6%. The rest is the inbound and outbound freight and where it's coming in from, what the cost is to store it, and then where it's going out, and what does that look like from this location versus this one. And then a big one that we're all talking about is labor. Does it have the labor supply now? Is it going to have it into the future? Is it expensive? Is it unionized? What is it? So these things all go into what we call total cost analysis. And so that is one of our unique advantages is no matter what size of the deal it is, we're going into those analytics.
I love it. Okay. Let's talk one last question, prospecting. Okay. Do you have a certain way you prospect?
Oh, yeah. I have a 7-step process.
7-step process. Can you share your 7-step process?
Well, I could, Rod. I'd have to kill you. Not yet, Rod. Maybe you have an upcoming event that I could share it at, though.
Okay, so you are, folks. Matt he's one of the amazing presenters at Massimo Con in November. So, Matt, will you be okay sharing this 7-step prospecting process to fill your pipeline in November?
Absolutely. I will share it in the fine city of Dallas with you and your prestigious guests.
Yeah, it's exactly what they are. Prestigious, productive guests. And you're definitely aligned with them all. Your story and your production and your accomplishments are incredible. I love the personal story. I always love those more. Now I'm thinking about you with stereos and blasting Rolling Stones.
I sold some speakers, that song.
Matt, I know you're busy. I cannot thank you enough for your time and really pumped to see you in a few months. Okay?
Excellent. Thanks for everything, Rod.
Well, hey, everyone else, you know what I say. Matt just dumped a whole bunch of knowledge on you. Listen to those lessons. Bring your kids in. Listen to what he had to say. And then go out and apply it. And when you apply it, and only after you apply it, will you see the results. Until next time, this is Rod Santomassimo with The Massimo Show. I want to thank you for listening to this version of The Massimo Show. And please go out and share this with your friends, your colleagues. Heck, share it with your dog. Just share it. And more importantly, just give me some feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. We all grow from understanding what our audience wants to hear. So until next time, this is Rod Santomassimo with The Massimo Show.